the funny thing is, like, I remember, um, like I remember feeling like this is when, although this doesn't make a lot of sense, but I feel like this is when life started, right? Like this is when I feel like I started actively making like choices to live like my own life.
Thanks for joining me. Please tell me your name.
My name is Ryan Wilson.
Okay, cool, cool. So tell me a bit about your backstory, about like how you were growing up.
Well, I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and I I was, you know, brought up in a, a I mean, my parents were married when I was born, but then they got divorced not too long after. And my mom, who had two children already before she had married my dad, um, took her two children and left me and my sister, who share the same father, and she had went to Florida and left us in Ohio, and that caused us to live with our grandmother for kind of like the beginning, of our the beginning of our lives. My dad was a truck driver, so he wasn't really able to take us, with him, right? So our grandmother took care of us for the early part of our years.
Oh, how was it growing up with your grandmother?
It was good, man. It was good. She was a great lady. Uh, Probably like many Black American grandmothers. She loved her soaps. She and Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, all those. So we would watch that with her. She was also a woman of God. So she would take us to church every week and every Sabbath because she was a Sabbath keeper. And we would go to church with her every week, and that was pretty much our life.
Oh, cool, cool. Did you have like, I know your dad was a truck driver, but did you have like a relationship with him? Did you have a relationship with your mom? Like reunite with them after you were living with your grandmother?
Well, for the time that we was living with my grandmother, my mom was in uh, Florida for the majority of that time. She did move back. Um, I believe it was just before my dad got remarried. And whenever my dad was in town, he would come and pick us up, and we would see him, and that was always pretty good. But my mom had originally come back. I remember a lot of broken promises. She would say that she was coming to get us. We would wait for her to show up, and you know, sometimes she just wouldn't. So it became kind of like you never know. But not too long, probably about when I was 6, 7, my dad got remarried, and and after when he got remarried, we went to live with my stepmom at the time. She also had two other children, so we went to live with my stepmom and stepsister and stepbrother. So yeah, that was sort of like you know the transition after we moved. And that was pretty much from the ages of 6, 7 till about 13. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So tell me a little more of like growing up with your siblings and like going to high school and whatnot. Like was did you have like a normal childhood?
um, Normal, man. When I was in fifth grade, I was never really a big like school person. When I was in fifth grade, I had a I had made a deal with one of my teachers, and she said that if I didn't disrupt the class, she would allow me to sleep because that's what I did. You know, I would always fall asleep in class. And she was like, you know, if you don't disrupt the class, then, you know, I'll let you sleep. So I was like, cool, deal. And I was sleeping in class. And then at the end of the year, she failed me. I was like, yo, that wasn't part of the deal. Like, that's not what we agreed upon. And you know, I don't know what I thought was gonna happen. But yeah, so I mean after that, like my dad was really upset. That's when I was still staying with my dad. Um After that he was like he was mad. He put me in to a public school because I was going to a Christian school at that time. And he
Oh,
was like, man, I ain't paying for this education if you ain't gonna get it. So he put me into a public school. And you know, I mean, I feel like my childhood was uh, you know, relatively normal, pretty sheltered for growing up in, you know, East Cleveland, which is, you know, not the best part of town. And but my dad was a good father. He, you know, took care of us, made sure we had everything that we needed. Although he, you know, wasn't there, he'll say, you know, though I wasn't able to spend quantity time, I made sure I spent quality time with you guys, and you know, I would dare to say that's true. You know, so yeah, I mean, I think it was, you know, about as normal, you know, as it could be, you know, given the circumstances. Um, but yeah, yeah.
was there any point of time that that normality shift? Like, was there any event that happened?
Yeah, when I was 13, um, as I said, my mom had moved back in. You know, she would sometimes come and get us, and you know, as that became a more regular occurrence, uh, the 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 um, the, the situation was worked out with my dad that if we had done our chores at home, me and my sister would be able to go and spend the weekend with my mom or whatever. She was living in Akron at this time, and we were living in Cleveland, Ohio. And so, you know, this one particular day, you know, she came to pick us up, and apparently our chores weren't done, you know, to my father's satisfaction, and he wasn't, you know, he wasn't about to let us go. And you know, my mother, you know, came into the house because you know, after he says no, of course we're crying, coming down like, oh, he said we can't go, and you know, so mom comes in and you know she's trying to you know reason with him and tell him you know like hey you know just let them come on, you know they can do it when they get back or whatever. And my dad, being the man of his word that he is, he said no. I said no. And you know he was upstairs at the time, so she's at the base of the stairs, you know, yelling up the stairs trying to convince him. And you know he's yelling back down the stairs. So you know they're yelling because of their distance, but then my mom persists and my dad, you know, gets out of bed. He, you know, he's coming downstairs and he's yelling, telling her to get out of his house, cussing her out, you know, telling her to get out of his house. And and you know, while she's like backing up, he pushes her. I mean, it wasn't anything like super violent, but you know, he pushed her nonetheless. And she bumps against the table, and my older brother who was there jumps in between them and say, hey man, don't put your hands on my mom. And then they start to fight. Well, my dad's not a small guy. My dad's a pretty big guy. My brother, on the other hand, is very thin. And my dad pins my brother up against the refrigerator. And when he does that, my mom runs to the kitchen counter, grabs a knife, and comes back and she stabs him 3 times in his back, um, which, you know, obviously at this point he lost, you know, strength and a lot of blood. And you know, I remember like standing there watching this happen, and I was, you know, sort of in shock. And my dad looks at me, he says, "What are you just standing there for? Go call the cops." So I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so I run upstairs and call the cops, and they send out an ambulance and the police. They arrest my mom, take my dad to the hospital. He's still alive. They said if it was, I think they said like a quarter of a quarter inch to the left, it would have killed him.
Wow.
And yeah, and so but he survived that, and we went to live with my we call her our aunt, but she's really my dad's cousin. So we went to go live with my aunt, and me and my sister, that is, my my other siblings, because I my mom had two, as I mentioned before, but then she had another one, my younger sister. So um they went to go live with my mom's mom, and we went to go live with our cousin. And yeah, that's where we were for about a year while the whole court process and all that stuff went through.
So your dad's in the hospital. Um, your mom is in jail around this time, right?
Yeah,
Um, but it's just like, man, that's
yeah,
crazy.
it's wild.
Huge turn of events. Also, how was life from from that point? Like, what happened?
um, the funny thing is, like, I remember, um, like I remember feeling like this is when, although this doesn't make a lot of sense, but I feel like this is when life started, right? Like this is when I feel like I started actively making like choices to live like my own life. Um, that was, of course, that was traumatizing for a 13-year-old. Um, but um, after that, my after the whole court process, after living with my aunt for a year, um, my dad pretty much asked us, where we wanted to be. Did we want to be with him or did we want to be with our mom? And because we had spent like the majority of our life with him, we ultimately decided, we wanted to live with our mom. So um, I went to go live with my mom at the age of 14. Me and my sister did.
Mm.
And at this age, that's when I started drinking, started smoking, hanging out with my big brother, doing all the stuff that he was doing. Um, I was still going to school, but like I was still pretty much, doing the same thing. Um, I remember feeling like I was like really dumb, but I think the real truth is I was just not interested, right? So I wasn't really applying myself to school, so I was just doing just enough to get by.
Right.
Um, yeah, it was like, but other than that, it was a social club, going to school, hang out with the friends, but yeah, so this was like that was pretty much life when I lived with my mom. I realized that I didn't have like my dad. My dad was a very even though he wasn't there like all the time, his words carried weight. You know what I mean? So even just talking to him on the phone, you're like, all right, well, I better straighten up and fly right because when pops get home, he was a firm believer that you spare the rod, you spoil the child. And when that um, that that hand, that authority, was no longer over me, I just started kind of like wilding out. My mom, during this time had sort of gone into a bit of a depression.
Mm.
She was dealing with some other like diseases, like she had like fibromyalgia, and back then nobody was even talking about fibromyalgia. A lot of people thought she was crazy or saying it was in her head and stuff. Um, I even thought that, for a time, I was terrible to my mother. I didn't understand, everything that she was going through. She had a felony, which made it difficult for her to find a job. Um, and with the fibromyalgia, which is essentially widespread body pain, um, it made her hard. It made it hard for her to do certain jobs. And before the the felony, she worked at a nursing home. I remember we would go. Me and my brother would go with her to the nursing home, and like while she was working, we would be in like the community area playing the game on the TV. So but yeah, after the felony, yeah, she was doing. Honestly, I have no idea what she was doing. I can't even remember. Um, so but yeah, that was pretty much life. I was just out there being a kid, doing stuff that I probably shouldn't have been doing, but that's life when you grow up like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, were you close to like your siblings at this point, or were there like any friends that you were like really close to at this point? 'Cause this is a tough time in the teenagers' life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, the thing about me is, um, I could be a bit oblivious, right? So the only thing that I really cared about this time, I was a big like video game head, right?
Okay.
That's all I wanted to do. All I wanted to do was play video games. So, I played with my brother, and then like if he wasn't around, I had my best friend Jamal. And I met him in seventh grade, and like we're best friends to this day. But we bonded over Halo, the Xbox game Halo, and like I mean, from that point on, like after school, I would either go to his house and play video games, or I would go back to my house, and we would go to my house and play video games. I much rather going to his house because my house was kind of crazy. Like my family has always been like kind of crazy. Like they're the type of family who, like, if they don't like what's happening, like it goes from 1 to 10 like immediately, and next thing you know, your sister calling the cops on you because like just craziness is happening. That is how it was. I remember one time, man, and I was, I was a contributor of the crazy. I remember one time my sister, I don't remember what she was doing, but I remember she was just messing with me and she wouldn't leave me alone. I got so upset. I grabbed a knife and I chased her all the way upstairs and she hid in the closet. And I remember just like stabbing the door with the knife, and then the knife bent and broke, and I threw the knife down and started punching the door. I punched it all kind of, I don't know if you've ever lived in like the housing developments, like the projects, you know what I mean? Like the doors that they always have in a home are like paper. They're not like, yeah. I punched holes like all through that door. It was, my hands were all cut up and bleeding. And yeah, we were crazy. We,
What happened with that event? I know, after that event happened with your sister, did you still have a good relationship with her, or with
man. Well, the thing is, that was just par for the course, like in our home.
oh,
I remember my older sister. She had an anxiety attack. Like she went crazy. She had an anxiety attack, and we had to call an ambulance for her. We
oh,
didn't know what to do. Like it was, I'll tell you another instance when I was being bad. Um, my my mom, my mom tried to whoop me, and my mom had only whooped me one time in my life, and that's during one of our visitations before we had lived with her. And I don't know, like what happened, but I remember she came home one night and she was drunk and she whooped me. Have no idea why she whooped me.
hmm,
I mean, maybe she was frustrated. Maybe I don't know, but she whooped me, and that was the first time she had ever whooped me, and like that scarred me for life. I was like, nah, like, so when I was 14 and she tried to whoop me, I was like, nah, this ain't happening. So she had grabbed the belt and she tried to hit me, and I grabbed the belt and I was like, nah, you're not about to whoop me. Um, and I took the belt from her, and my I remember she called my brother in there to help her to stop me, and he I remember he grabbed me by the neck and I like ripped his hand off, and he used to have like long nails, so he ended up cutting my neck, and I grabbed the knife.
Yeah.
That was my thing. Apparently, I just grabbed knives, and I grabbed the knife. Hmm. Um, and he was like, "What? You gonna use that on me?" And I was like, "Nah." So I threw it down, and I ran out, and I ran out, and my mom at that point had called the cops on me.
Yeah.
And while I'm walking down the street, I see like this car. It was an unmarked car pulled by because it was the projects, right? So unmarked car pulls by, um, and the cop gets out and he starts walking towards me, and I book it. I just started running, and I didn't really like I had started having like depressive um um
Like thoughts of like you were in a state of depression.
yeah, I had started having these they were like, momentary times of deep depression. I can't, I feel like there's a better way to describe it, but I had started having those after we had the incident with like my mom and my dad, just kind of like having these uh thoughts of like pointlessness. I mean, like, stuff doesn't really matter. And I remember when I started running from the cop, I got to this main street. It was like one of the main streets. It was dark. But I'm not thinking about that, I'm not thinking about anything. I'll just dart across the street, not caring if, I got hit by a car or not. Just ran across the street, didn't look, just kept running. And I didn't get hit. And I got about 2 blocks down. And then, I finally thought, man, what am I doing? I'm like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna be on a run. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Were they
Like,
chasing you and like
yeah, they were chasing me. As soon as I started running, they started chasing me. The other one had ran back to the car to, get the car to chase me. Yeah, so I was just kind of like, what am I gonna be on a run? So I sat down on the curb and waited for them to catch up to me. And you know, and they put me in cuffs because I was a juvenile. They took me to Dan Street.
Mhm.
That was the juvenile, booking area. Later that night, a few hours later, my mom finally came and picked me up. I didn't talk to her for like 2 months after that. Um, and that was that, I don't know. That was just the craziness that like happened like in home. In fact, when we we lived in Akron until I was about 16. We moved to Abilene, Texas. My mom was looking for some some help, right? Because she couldn't get a job with a felony.
Right.
And my aunt was a preacher of a church which had like, it wasn't a mega church by any means, but it was a pretty good operation. And she was like, well, she could use some help either like in the babysitting area or like, the office administration or whatever. So and she had a house for us to stay in down there. It was a nice house too. One of the biggest houses I had ever been in. Yeah, it's
Win-win.
crazy. Yeah, like it was. I was like, man, this is crazy. Those pastors who are like prosperity preachers and you know, word of faith, uh, word of faith folk. I feel like she was something like that. but she had a couple of properties that was nice. I remember her house being nice. Her and her husband had like C-class Mercedes. Like apparently they were doing well.
Yeah.
you know. So I was like, cool. I remember when we had first got down there, she had offered me and my brother, or she had offered me and my brother some work. My brother didn't want to do it, but I was like, bro, yeah, let's go. Like I make some money. I know you should be paying good. All this stuff you got, right?
Right.
So she wanted me to mow the lawns of a couple of her properties, these big lawns, and she didn't have a ride mower, right? So I do these lawns, and you know what she gave me? School supplies. Bro, I was hot. Like, I was so hot. I was like, word? School supplies.
So did you stay there?
Well, so I had lived with my mom, right? I didn't really have a choice with that. So wherever my mom went, that's where I went. So she was still there because she was getting helped, and we had a place to stay. Um, I started, I'm 16, right? At this point, I'm trying to get a job, so I can make some real money. That's with school supplies. And I remember, um, I had this thought afterward, but I was trying to find a job and I couldn't find a job, and and my aunt, who was the pastor of this church, she was like, well, you should pray about it, and I'm like, all right, sure, I'll try anything. Just let me get this job. So I prayed, and like 2 weeks later, I had got a job. I ended up getting a job at Olive Garden, where this is actually where one of the other parishioners worked. He had worked in there as a dishwasher, and I had got a job as a busboy.
Right.
But yeah, man, it was a pretty cool job. I enjoyed that job a lot. Um, and that's what we did, and I would go to work in the evenings, and then I would go to school in the mornings. Uh, well, around spring break, everybody wanted to, all the people who were young there, who were students, wanted to leave and go somewhere for spring break.
Yep.
So they needed all these shifts like picked up, morning shifts and evening shifts. And I was like, yo, I'll take them all. And that week, I worked 5 16-hour shifts in a row.
Awesome.
I made so much money, man. I made so much money, and I was saving up like all my, I was saving up, and I was gonna give my mom uh like $1,000, right? For her birthday, which was in May. And like the messed up part was, like, I was really the only one working or doing anything to really like help out in the house. And I don't even I say that, but I don't even know if that's like fully true, because I don't know what everybody else was doing.
Right.
I just know what I was doing. And I remember like everybody else having like jobs that they went to faithfully. But you know, so one day she gets upset with me,
Mhm.
you know, and she wanted some money for something, and I was like, nah, I didn't want to give it to her because I knew that I had money that I was going to be giving to her here soon, and that turned into some huge fight. She ended up kicking me out, and
Of your aunt's house?
yeah, about Aunt's house. And we had some friends that we had met, um, like just in and around town, that we would go hang out and drink with and smoke with, me and my brother. And so I ended up staying with them for I don't know, like 2 weeks until my mom like calmed down. I ended up only giving her like $300 for her
Mhm.
birthday instead of the 1,000. I blew that 1,000 that whole week. I bought like all kind of video games and stuff because I was upset. And yeah, so that was like pretty much like our time in Abilene. There was an instance, that happened before we moved back though. Um, like I said, my aunt was a
A
a
pre.
preacher, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and I wasn't like at this time I wasn't like really like thinking about God or anything like that. Like it wasn't like a super big deal, but I was sort of open, right?
Right.
So I had started I mean and mention like I was raised, Christian. My grandmother, brought us up. Um and she attended the Seventh Day Adventist Church and we attended that faithfully with her. Um but when I was attending church with my aunt, she was Pentecostal,
Mhm.
and she was kind of like saying, uh, like it was very kind of like they were of the ilk of, like the proof of the Holy Spirit is speaking in tongues,
Okay. Yeah.
like, and it's one of the gifts, as it were. And this one time, while after attending service, I was sitting there and I was wondering, like, man, like how is it that it seems like everybody is speaking in tongues? Like, how did they get this power? Like, and how can I get it? I wanted part of it. And I went up to my aunt and I was like, hey, I want this power. I want to be able to speak in tongues. So what
Right.
do I got to do? And she's like, well, we can. What we'll do is we'll get some of the head elders. We'll go into the conference room. We'll pray, until you're baptized with the Holy Spirit. Yeah, you know. So that's what we do. We get the elders. We go in there. We're praying, and and I always say this, but like you if you never pray, like if you don't pray like at all, 10 minutes is a very long time. We're in there praying for like 10 minutes. I'm like, yo, like, okay, all right. After 10 minutes go by, I'm like, I don't think this is gonna I don't think it's gonna work for me. I don't think that's it's not mine. I don't think so. I try to tell my aunt, I'm like, Auntie, I don't think this is working. And she's like, have you spoken tongues yet, baby? No. She's like, well, just keep praying.
Hmm.
All right. So, I keep praying. After another 5 minutes pass, I don't think they're gonna let me out of here. So I faked it. I say, oh, Kurahane Baba Shimba Baba. And they
Wow.
were like, oh, praise God. Everybody was praising the Lord. And I was just I was like I wasn't really thinking about God up until that point, but at this point, I was like, if I can fake this, and all these people who are supposedly speaking to God believe me, then as far as I'm concerned, they're all faking it. And that was kind of my mindset. I was just kind of like this ain't worth it. And and this is where I started to like kind of like not believe in God, right? Like not saying that I like super believed in him before, but I was just kind of raised like that. At this time, I'm just kind of like, nah, man, this is all a game. This is all a joke.
So you mean like you turned atheist?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
How was your mindset being an atheist? Like so you had to get like new friends or something like that?
Well, no, actually, when I had talked to my best friend about this, he was like, he was brought up in a Christian home, and he was like, "Bro, like, I hear you. Like, I don't think, I don't think there is a God either." He was like, but I don't want to say it out loud because, I know my grandma would, trip, and my mom probably trip too. So he's like, but bro, yeah, I don't, my friend was already atheist. I didn't even realize it,
Okay,
Um,
cool.
so yeah, yeah, and this is when we had moved back to Akron eventually, like 2007, yeah, 2006, 2007, we had moved back to Akron, and yeah, he was like, nah, nah, nah.
How old were you then?
Uh, I was 18, 17, 18. When we moved back. We only lived in Abilene for about a year. So I moved up there when I was 16, and I moved back when I was 17, turning 18.
Oh, so 18. So did you go to college? Did you start a different?
Nope, now. Not immediately. I was like more interested in working, and I had dropped out of school when I was in Texas. And this is actually, I sort of had that thought. I was like, man, maybe when I worked for my aunt, and she gave me the school supplies. It was sort of like, choose, you want the money or you want this education, you know what I mean? And I was like, man, I want the money. And eventually, after that spring break week, and then I got into that whole fight with my mom. I stopped going to school like altogether. I started skipping school and just picking up extra shifts at work because I was all about trying to make the money, almighty dollar.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could definitely understand that, especially being that age, and you got to make money because you're kind of on your own at that
Yeah.
time. So who were you living with at those ages when you were working?
So I was when I was 16, I was living with my mom. When she wasn't, taking me out. um, and then when I was 17, I was living with my mom when we first moved back because she had a boyfriend, so we were living with her and her boyfriend. And then I had when I got a job at the Hilton in Akron. Um, I ended up getting my first apartment with my oldest sister, who I got along with, pretty well, my best friend, and myself. We all three uh, got an apartment, our first apartment, which was funny. My sister was in college. She was, she would get like student loans or whatever, and however often those came in, that's how she would contribute to the bills or whatever. My best friend was still in high school, um, because remember I failed fifth grade, so I had to repeat. So in seventh grade, I was older than everybody, but I've
Right.
always been pretty short, so I blend in. So, but yeah, so he was still in high school, and I was the only one working. His mom, like the agreement was that his mom would like, you know, help pay his half. It wasn't like we were charging him like full price or whatever. But which I don't think she ever did, like ever helped out with that. I think we were just happy to have our own space, be able to do our own thing, and uh, we would we would go. I would go to work every day. I was an incredibly irresponsible like work guy. Every morning I woke up cursing because I was late. Like that was like the regular day to day. Like every day I woke up. And I had a boss, um, Paul Sincata, who was the manager at the Hilton. There was a local chef's restaurant inside the Hilton. It was called Bo's Grill, and Paul was the manager of the Bo's Grill. Um, he was like a manager slash consultant. So um, So he took a great interest in me for whatever reason. And he became almost like a second father to me. It was because of him that you know, I ended up getting my first two cars. I got my license. I got my GED. All of that under his, tutelage, if you would. And he was, I'm still in touch with him today. He's a great, great guy. Um, uh, yeah, he played a big part in my life, um, helping me to learn and understand and see things, certain ways. So he he realized, I was like constantly late, and he would like one day he came to my uh to my house. This is after everything went south with our apartment, but he had came to my house and he like knocked on like my window, like, get your butt up and get to work because I had overslept again. I was late again. So but yeah, he took a great interest, in my life.
Shouts out to him. Yeah. Anyone that has a keen interest in a young person like that, yeah, yeah, he definitely saw something in you that you probably didn't even see in yourself. This was all when you were still in your atheist days. How did you stop being an
Oh.
atheist?
So um when I was 19, a few years. When I was 19, going to 20, I moved to Arizona. When I moved to Arizona, I had lived with my dad, but he eventually kicked me out. And this is a running theme in my life. I live with people that kick me out. But I lived with him. He ended up kicking me out, and I was sort of like pseudo homeless for a good 9 months, where I was just like kind of like couch surfing. I had stayed with my sister for a little bit, and then she kicked me out, and I had stayed with um, these this random couple that I had met probably like a week prior, and I had lived with them for the majority of that 9 months, and then I eventually got a job at Walmart. When I got this job at Walmart, um, I had left their house because things started getting weird, and it's just a bad situation. So I left their house, and I started staying with my friend. His name was Kendrick. I started staying with his brother-in-law. Right, I'll call him brother-in-law. So I had started living with them, and I was paying him rent. But he had a gambling problem, so he ended up losing the property that he had. And when I got kicked out, I ended up moving in with coworkers. So um, I moved in with a coworker named Daniel. And working at Walmart, me and him, we had a routine. The routine was basically, um, we worked overnight, so 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Yeah. And basically, what we do is we would go to work, come home, smoke, eat, sleep, wake up, smoke, go to work, come home, rinse, wash, repeat. So we would just do that, over and over again. Now, at this time, I am 21, 22, 21, 22, like around that area. And, I'm starting to, you know, my logic at when I had became atheist was sort of like, if there's no God, then the only reason for living is self gratification, right? Doing what you want to do, whatever you want to do, just do it. YOLO. You only live once. So that's how I live. Very uh, heavy partying life. Drinking, smoking. I I hadn't gone to college. Um, I hadn't gone to like a college campus or like I did after I got my GED. I did attempt college, but it was online and I didn't even last the whole semester. When I was younger, when I was partying. That's all I did. Partying, partying, partying. And as I had the thought that, like what I look like being 30, and in a club. You know what I mean? Like what I look like trying to still act like a young kid, when I'm old. Like, nah, I ain't trying to do that. So basically the conclusion was party hard until I'm 30 and then I just kill myself because, what's the point in struggling through the rest of life, right? That don't make no sense. So when I was about 20, 21, 22, I'm having like sort of like during this routine, I'm starting to have like thoughts like, man, this is baloney, right? Like I go to work just so I can like come home and smoke and sleep and smoke a lot of weed and I used to call Mary Jane the gold digger because she only came around when I had money. So I'm like going to work to spend money on this weed, that like it's not really solving any issues. It's just back and forth. It's just this round and round thing. So I was like, man, is this even worth it? Like, what's the point in doing this? Um, I met a lot of people partying, but these people I actually like keep in touch with. There's like no real meaningful connections. Like, what's the point? What is the point in living at all? Um, you know, um, is the struggle worth the the tiny points of happiness, or when you're partying and you're feeling good, is the weeks that you have to struggle and work just so you make sure all your bills are paid, um worth it for the 1 or 2 nights on the weekend you get to party, right? Like, so I don't know, I just kind of feeling like it wasn't adding up. And so I'm starting to debate, taking my life even now. Why wait till 30? Um, and while I was debating that, I had a thought that said, I mean, well, before you do that, you know, why not give that God thing another try, right? Give it another look. Because, when you were younger, you didn't see, the point in it, but, you didn't think like you think now. It might be worth it,
Right.
to give it another look. So that's what I decided to do. Now, how this happened was just every so often I would turn on like TBN or something just to see what they're saying. And there's one, the guy was talking about the prodigal son.
Okay. Yep.
Talking about how he went out and spent his inheritance on riotous living, where he just partying all the time, you know? And I could relate to that. I was like, yeah, that kind of sounds like me. And he was talking about how the father was happy to have the son come back and how God wants us to come back. And I was just like, okay, all right, fine. I'm gonna entertain this thought. So that's what I started to do. I started to entertain the idea that God might even exist, right? Not that I necessarily believed in him, just the idea that God is possible. And then um, a little bit later, a couple days later, or maybe a week later, um, I am we get home, and my roommate goes out and he's going to find some weed for us. So I'm chilling at the house waiting on him, channel surfing, whatever. And I stop by TVN again, and there's a guy on there, and he's talking about he's talking about, how God has a purpose for our life, right? And that
Right.
resonated with me because like my whole mindset, up to this point was, what is the point? Like why? Like why live? What is the reason for being? And so the idea that God had, a purpose, right, for me, resonated, and I was like, man, okay, well, maybe I'm open to hearing what that is. And he went into this whole bit, talking about, you know, um, asking you shall receive, knocking it shall be open, seeking you shall find, all this stuff. And just after he went into all that, um, he my homeboy called me and he was like, bro, I can't like the dude I can't get a hold of anybody, so I can't find any, so we might just have to go without. And when he said that, I was just kind of like, man, all right, bro,
Talking
it's
about the
whatever.
he was talking about the weed man.
Yeah, he was talking about the weed man. He couldn't get in touch with him, so so we were, you know, suffering. So 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 but so after that, what happens after I hang up with him, I think about it and say, well, I mean, you did, the preacher man just said, ask and you shall receive. So the first thing I prayed for, the first thing I prayed for was weed. I was like, Lord, you said ask and you shall receive. So, you know, you see the issue. I'd like some weed. And like after I prayed that, like right after that, he called me back. He was like, hey, the homie just messaged me. He said I gotta come and pick it up. I'm about to swing through and pick you up, and we're gonna go and get it. The weird thing is, like, that wasn't something that normally happened. Like normally he would just go and get it, and like I would give him money for it, whatever. Like, that was the first time like he was like, yeah, I'm gonna come pick you up. So we went. He came and picked me up, and we went to go get it. So we get the weed, right? We get to dude's house. He goes in, he grabs it, he comes back out, and we go to leave, but the van won't start now. We trying to figure out, man, what's going on with this van? And like we're there for like 15 minutes, opening the hood, looking at it. I ain't know nothing about cars, but I'm looking at it like I did, right? Battery connected good, like but nothing we try will get this thing working. So I go into the van. I'm like, man, well, I mean, it worked for the weed, so why wouldn't it work for the van? So I say, Lord, I appreciate the weed. Now I would like to be able to get home and smoke it. So can you help us out with this vehicle issue? And yeah, after I prayed that, I was just like, hey man, I don't know, but just try and start it again. So he goes in there, goes to start it, starts right up. I was like, oh, okay, all right, maybe something to this, like, once maybe a coincidence, twice, I don't know. I'm starting to, I'm starting to get curious now. And so we get back to the house, we roll up, we smoking, and I'm telling him, like everything that has happened that day, up until that point. And I come to find out he's actually Christian. And that was like a thing about like Christianity that always bugged me. Like me and my sister, we would like go to the same parties, like right around like my atheist phase. And I would tell her I don't believe in God, and she said, oh, you going to hell. But I'm like, we doing the same thing. Like our lives are essentially the same. How am I going to hell and you're not? Like that never made sense to me. I never like understood the point of being a Christian if it didn't have any type of like effect in your life, like no like actual change. So I was like, yo, that didn't make sense to me. So I found out at that moment that he was Christian. He was like, yeah, man, I've had your experiences like that and whatnot. And I was like, yeah, the only prayer that hasn't been answered is like, what is my purpose? Like why am I here? And he was like, I don't know, man, but because of your personality, it kind of seemed like you should be like a radio talk host or something like that. I don't know, a place of influence or something like that. And when he said that, I had like this eureka moment where it's like my entire life flashed before my eyes, the good, the bad, and the ugly, everything, that had happened. And it was like God was saying, all your life, I have been preparing you for the purpose that I have for you. Follow me. And when I heard that, when I felt that, I like started freaking out. I started hyperventilating, and he was like, "Man, you good?" I'm over here like trying to catch my breath. He's
So
like, "You all right, man?" I'm like,
hear that voice. It was just a voice like that, clear as day.
"Yeah, it was like the thing is, I don't say clear as day because I'm pretty sure he didn't hear it, right? Like I'm sitting right in front of him, and I don't feel like he heard it, but like I heard it. You know what I mean? Like it was clear to me,
Okay.
and that's like, and I like I don't know, like that's why I say when I heard it, when I felt it, because it was sort of like a combination of the two, and I was like, man, I started hyperventilating, and I had to get up, and I had to go out and get some air. And um, I, I at this point I accepted um, the idea that there is a God, and not only that there is a God, but yet there is a God that has a purpose for my life. And I set my mind to follow Him.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Were you like still partying after you made that decision, smoking, drinking, and stuff?
Well, Rome wasn't built in a day. Yeah, so there was a particular instance that I was back and forth, dipping my foot in, back and forth between partying and stuff, and there was a particular instance where there was this young lady who I was deeply infatuated with. Um, I mean, you know, cute little Mexican thing, out here in Arizona. Um, and like she had me hooked, but the girl was poison, as Belle Biv DeVoe would say. But yeah, so I was, talking to this girl, and while when I would hang out with her, I was always, drinking, smoking. I even got into some of the like synthetic drugs. You know, they had like this synthetic cocaine style stuff that I was doing. Um, Even like the synthetic weed sometimes because it was cheaper and more easily accessible than you know
Well,
when
this
you
was
didn't have
all
enough.
after you like became a Christian again.
Yeah, 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 yeah. This is all after that. Um, you know, yeah. So yeah, I'm talking, I'm talking to this girl, and I'm doing all this stuff. And this particular time, um, after I had, became Christian again, my dad was planning on bringing my grandmother because she was getting older. He was planning on bringing her from um, Ohio to live with him in Arizona, and he wanted me to come live with them because while he was on the road, he wanted someone to be there to watch after her.
Okay.
And this is the grandmother who raised me, for the first 5-6 years of my life. Um, the one who was a faithful church attendant, the woman of God. Funny how God works. But yeah, so I was living with him at the time, and this girl was living in Mesa. So it was Tolleson to Mesa is about a 45-minute drive in the Phoenix area, and I would make that drive just to go hang out with her. On this particular time, I was, I got done hanging out with her, and I was I was so high and drunk and, just out of my mind. I had been up all night, and I go to leave her. I drop her off, and I go home. And like, while I'm on my way home, I'm going to make this 45-minute drive. Um, while I'm high and drunk, like that wasn't something that was like new to me. Drinking and driving was something that I did regularly. And it was just, by God's grace that I never got, um, well, I can't say pulled over, but I never got a DUI, and I never got in any accidents. But yeah, so this time while I'm driving, I actually end up blacking out. And when I came to, I'm at a stoplight and I don't know where I am.
Wow.
And I'm trying to figure out like where I am. I'm looking at the street names, and I see this one. I'm like, man, that sort of looks familiar. I'm gonna turn right. So I go to turn right. In the midst of me turning right, I black out again.
Wow.
Next time I come to, I'm at another stoplight, and again, still lost. Don't know where I am. And the reason why that's significant is because if you know, like Phoenix is a grid. Like it's literally streets, streets. Like it's literally a grid. And the east side, you have the streets. So you have Central Street, and then Second Street, Third Street, Fourth Street, and then on the west side you have the avenues. So you have Second Ave, Third Ave, Fourth Ave. It's literally a grid. You'll know like what side you're on. And I had worked for Hertz Rent-A-Car, where I literally drove cars all over the valley, to different Hertz locations. And so I had driven all over this valley. So for me to be lost or not able to, figure out where I am, I guess speaks more so to, the mind state that I was in, or, the effect that the drugs and alcohol was having on my brain.
Right.
So I couldn't figure out where it was, but, I saw a street and I'm like, well, maybe, maybe it's this street. Maybe this is the way I'm supposed to be going. But yeah, so even thinking back on it, I don't even know what the streets were. It's so foggy. Like I can't see it. So I was like, well, maybe this street. So I went to turn left, and I turned left, and I blacked out again. You know, um, after the first time, yeah, after the second time I blacked out, I was like, man, if this keeps happening, I'm gonna have to like pull over and sleep it off, right? Because I can't be driving not even knowing that I'm driving. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
having no, cognitive, consciousness that I'm driving. And but the third time that I came to, I was pulling up into my driveway,
Wow.
and I can't tell you to this day how I got home. Like I have no idea. And I when I went into the house, my dad was there, and he was upset. He could tell that I was visibly um, tweaking is the correct word, um, because I had this tweak where I kept like while he's trying to talk to me, I just keep rubbing the inside of my lip against my teeth,
Yeah.
and I couldn't help but do it. Like it was like compulsive. Um, and he he was like, "Look at you!" He was just going on and on and on and on. And there was one thing that he said that stuck through all the noise was, "You're supposed to be Christian." And and that spoke to me because that was like my whole thing, with Christians and people saying that they're Christian, but it has no change in their life. It has no power in their life. And when I had like first decided to become Christian, I was like, I'm gonna get it straight from the horse's mouth. I'm not going to a pastor. I'm not going to a church. I'm gonna open the Bible and I'm gonna read it. And I read in Matthew 5:48, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. And I know to a lot of people that might like come off as like daunting, as like, man, well, it's impossibly perfect. Nobody's perfect, you know. But I didn't see it like that. What it said to me was that it's possible for you to be more than you are.
Hmm.
Right? Like that was encouraging to me. This is Jesus himself saying, be ye therefore perfect. To me, that was a promise, not a command.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, and that is what, you know, inspired, you know, that kind of like idea that it is possible to be more than you are. So when he said you're supposed to be Christian, like that hit home directly. And I was like, man, you know what? You're right. And, you know, at this point, I was just kind of like, you know what? I'm not dealing with this foolishness no more. I'm not going out there to see her. I got to cut all that off. And I need to just focus on, you know, me and my relationship with Jesus. And that's what I did for about a week.
Man, a week, and then after the week, it was back to the same old thing.
Uh, not not in full, right?
Yeah.
So about a week later, maybe a week and a half later, the same girl, she sent me a message. She slid in my DMs, as it were. And she said, I miss you. IMY, right? I was like, yo, I can't even be driving out there no more, man. My dad don't even want me using his car like that. Like, that's 45-minute drive, all that gas. Like, I can't be doing it. So, it ain't gonna work. And she was like, oh, I live in Avondale now. She sends me her address. Google it. 11 minutes away.
Oh.
Practically around the corner. I'm like, man. So I start freaking out. I'm like, God, man. I'm like, I don't want, I don't want to. I know I shouldn't do it, man. I just, I don't know what to do, man. I said, man, I know I'm gonna flip a coin, right? I said, heads I go, tails I don't go. Flip a coin, boom, tails. I was like, I ain't listening to no coin. So I was like, you know what? I should just pray. You know, I should pray. I was like, all right, Lord, you know, I really want to go, you know, but I don't feel like I'm supposed to. So I just ask that you will like, you know, speak to me, tell me like what you want me to do, right? So let me see. I got a Bible right here. Yeah, I do. So I grab the Bible. I grab my Bible and I flip it open. I'm like, you know, and it opens to I think it was either, I feel like it was Psalms. It was like somewhere in Psalms, you know, probably like 119 or something like that.
Yeah.
It was one of the higher number Psalms. And I'm sitting there and I'm reading it, and I sit back on my bed trying to like make the passage conform to my situation. You know what I mean? Like, you know,
Yeah.
you do that, right? You like open it, you read a passage, and then you try to like, you know, fix it in, you know. And while I'm doing that, my ceiling fan is actually on, and it ends up blowing my page, the pages of my Bible over, right? And the first thing I did is, man, I lost my page. You know, now I gotta like try to get back to where I was. But then I think, well, what if, right? What if God is trying to answer me in his own way and not like in my way, right?
All right. Yeah.
And you know, my old Bible, I wish I still had it. But you know, the way it is, it opened it up to Proverbs 5. And Proverbs 5 was like the beginning of the page in my old Bible. It was like, that's how it starts. You know, some, you know, in the Bible, some chapters can start in the middle of the page or, you know, on the next page, you know, like depending on how long the previous chapter is and all that stuff. But this one, it was Proverbs 5, top of the page, you know, first column. It was like, boom, you know, and I was like, all right, well, fine. I'll read what Proverbs 5 has to say. This is what it said. My son, attend unto my wisdom and bow thine ear to my understanding, that thou mayest regard discretion and that thy lips may keep knowledge. For the lips of a strange woman drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps take hold on hell. Lest thou should ponder the path of life, her ways are movable, that thou canst not know them. Right? Like there's no steadiness with this girl. She don't. I mean, you don't know what she's doing, bro. So I read that, and I like to ask, what do you think I did after I read that?
You probably disregarded it.
That's exactly what I did. Like you would hope I would be like, okay, Lord. I mean, you have spoken. I was like, that did not just happen. And I closed the Bible, and I got in the car, and I started heading over there. And when I got to the end of my sort of like home development area, community, the end of the community going out to the main road, I got there and I realized I had left my wallet. And I think, man, left my wallet. I need to go back and get it. Shouldn't be driving without an ID. But then I thought, I just said no to the Bible. I don't think I could do that twice. So we're gonna go without it. So I go to put my foot on the pedal. And as I do that, I hear as clear as day, if you go out tonight, the cops will be involved.
Sheesh.
Cops will be involved. And then I stop, put my foot back on the brake, and I think, is that a problem? Yeah. When I had first moved to Arizona, when I was 19, 20, I got a ticket for underage consumption and urinating in public. Yeah, so that happened. I'm like 22 at this time when I'm thinking about that, and so there's a warrant out for my arrest because I never got it taken care of. I never took care of it. Never paid them their money because I wasn't really working. Then when I was working, it had been like over a year, so I wasn't worried. I wasn't thinking about it. So I was like, it should be fine. And I'm put and I put my foot on the gas and I drive out. I pick her up because I don't want to get pulled over. After I pick her up, I'm just like, yo, we're gonna. She said she was staying at her aunt's house or something like that. She didn't want to invite me into her aunt's house, so we decided to stay in the car. And pretty sure it was some dude she was staying with. Like, I think that, but so we decided to stay in the car or whatever. And I didn't want to do a lot of driving, so I just drove around, a corner. I parked in the street, so I wouldn't get pulled over. And while I'm sitting there, we're talking for about 10 minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes. And this black SUV comes up while I'm parked, and he pulls up next to me, slows down, and then he speeds off like real fast. I was like, that was weird.
That's very weird.
And yeah, like, I don't know, 20 seconds later, these bright lights come on, and I see them in my rear view, and this, cop SUV pulls out and pulls out like of this alley, and he pulls up like right behind me and turns on his lights. Of all the places I could have parked, like, what are the chances? This is why I don't believe in coincidences. Like, what are the chances of all the places that I could have parked? I parked right in front of this alley where this cop is sitting.
Wow.
I wasn't even pulled over. I was already pulled over, and he just rolls up behind me. And so yeah, he comes out and he's like, yo, he asked me for my license. I don't have it, obviously. he asks us for our names. I give him my name. She gives him a fake name, right? Her ways are movable. Thou canst not know them. You know, and he goes back, runs our information. He couldn't find her in the system, obviously. Um, he comes back and he's like, "Man, Tempe wants you." Tempe is the college town of Phoenix, right? Um, he says Tempe wants you, and he takes me out, puts me in cuffs, and I'm starting to think. I'm starting to think about, the car. This is my dad's car that's about to be impounded. Excuse me. Um, I got my job was laying people off. So if you were late for any reason, you got laid off because there wasn't a lot of work. So I'm like, man, I'm about to get laid off. I'm about to have to get bailed out of jail, and my dad's gonna have to like hire somebody to pick him up from the truck tomorrow. And like all this stuff is going through my head about all this bad stuff that's about to happen. And then another thought comes to my mind: whose fault is this? Like, who deserves the blame for this situation? And when I think that, I just want, man, I get it, right? Like when God tells us to do something or not to do something, it's not because He doesn't want us to have fun or whatever. It's for our own protection. He's trying to protect us from ourselves. A lot of times. So I just, I start. This is another freak out moment. I start freaking out, and I get excited, and um, I start telling her and the cop about like all my experience, like how God was telling me, don't do this, and all of everything that happened up until that point. She's looking at me like I got 40 heads. She's like, what is wrong with this dude? Like, he's crazy. And the cop is just kind of like, should have listened. But at the end of the day, Tempe didn't want to drive the hour out to Avondale to pick me up. Avondale didn't want to drive the hour out to Tempe to drop me off. So the cop is like, bro, just get it taken care of, and I was like, man, and he ended up letting me go. And I was like, all right, I got to get this taken care of. And and I want to say that was the last time that I saw her, but it wasn't. There's another proverb that says, "As a dog returneth unto his vomit, so doth a fool to his folly." And yeah, that was me. A couple more times, I went and saw her. She eventually ended up like stealing my phone, and I was just kind of like, bro, I don't know what she on, but I'm not. I'm done. Like, I'm done. I stop being stupid, and I'm done. Like, so I cut her off, and and at that point, I got pretty serious about like my relationship with God. After all that had happened, I had a um, I had started attending church more often. Started taking my grandmother to church, and that's what we had did. Like, that was sort of like you know the the catalyst that was like, yo, I'm gonna do this for real.
Man, that was a great testimony. Your life story, man, is ups and there's downs. There's so much involved in that, but the key thing from it that kept coming up was that God wasn't done with you. He has a purpose for you.
Yeah.
He had a purpose for you. He still has a purpose for you,
Yep.
and you're still on that journey. And man, that's great, and that's encouraging, man. Thanks a lot for your time, and thanks a lot for sharing that with all of us. And it surely will help a lot of people who are listening into this.
I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.